This video is sponsored by Card Market. Card Market is Europe's largest online marketplace for trading card games. There is no better place to fulfill all your Yu-Gi-Oh! And card game-based needs. The platform is not only exclusive to only Yu-Gi-Oh!, but also has sections for all other major card games. You can find a link to Card Market down below in the description. And now, without further ado, let's go into the video.
What's up guys, this is Simon from Card Gaming, and today I want to showcase 3 really cool combos involving the Phantom Knights of Torn Scales in the Infernoble deck. So if you've been paying attention to the recent LCS, you might have noticed that both Infernoble and the pure Phantom Knight deck were really popular at that event. And the thing about the Phantom Knight deck is that those decks tend to be focused very heavily around Bardish, and they almost always play Dragoon. And some of the players at the event, including players like Jesse Cotton, for example, decided to play a pretty hefty Infernoble engine in those decks. So they play cards like Oliver and Renaud as just really good warrior extenders. But the end goal is still to kind of output these Bardish plus Dragoon boards. But the thing is that the reverse is not really true. You don't really see people play like a Phantom Knight engine in the Infernoble deck. So I wanted to showcase some possibilities for that card today. Currently, there's 2 kind of standard builds of Infernoble. One is the Coltwing Despot build, which I've shown in a previous combo video on this channel. And the other is the kind of Calamities focused build, which Gabriel Susi played at the Remote Duel Invitational, and he has some good videos in his channel as well. So these new combos are going to be kind of adaptations of existing combos, as well as kind of introducing some new life into the Infernoble deck. So they might be cool to play around with in the next month or so before we get a ban list. And yeah, I want to showcase some of those, so let's just jump right into it. So if you don't know what Torn Scales does, its effect is that you discard any card, so this card is going to be here as a filler, and then you mill a Phantom Knight from your deck to the graveyard, and after that, if Torn Scales is in your graveyard and you banish another PK, then you can bring back Torn Scales, but it gets banished when it leaves the field. So essentially what that means is that in conjunction with the other Phantom Knight cards, Torn Scales becomes 4 link material by itself, which is crazy. And we're going to use that to our advantage by making really strong links like Isolde, but also we're going to be incorporating Cherubini into some of these combos. So this is going to be the first of 3 combos in this video, and I also want to mention that if you have not seen our previous combo video that was posted under the new ban list, I recommend you check that out because we're going to be covering a lot of the same kind of concepts and ideas from that video in this one. So this first one is a variant on the King Calamity combo shown in the first video, which if you recall was off of just Isolde. You ended up summoning Fibrax plus like a Gamma or any level 2 tuner and a Borreload Savage Dragon, and then on the opponent's turn you would use Fibrax to go into Formula Synchron and then go into the King Calamity to shut the opponent out of their card effects. So the problem with that combo back then was that you didn't really have an out to your opponent playing a lot of these really strong going second cards like Dark Ruler No More and Forbidden Droplet, which would just stop your combo cold, and it would mean that you had basically nothing because you weren't hand looping them. And you also had no follow-up because you weren't making Roland, and your Isolde Search was being used up to kind of make the Savage, and it basically meant that even if you had a King Calamity, you would just have the 4k damage, and then you had no guarantee you had engine access. So there was no way to actually kill them on the next turn. So Torn Scales actually manages to solve that, so let's just go ahead and jump into this one. You're going to start off with Torn Scales dumping Cloak. Cloak will add Boots, and then you can special Boots. And so every combo is going to start off like this. You should get familiar with these cards. You're going to go into our Isolde and add Red Layer. This is the very standard Tatsunoko into Savage combo, so I'm not going to explain much of this. Summon Genba, go into Marcher and then Tatsu per usual, and then we're going to Synchro with Tatsu and the Red Layer in hand into Savage Dragon. And that's going to protect the rest of the combo, which is pretty well known at this point. You're going to go Fibrax, summoning a Plague Spreader, so this is a very simple combo. It's got very minimal Garnet, which is nice. And now that the Boots is in our graveyard, we're going to banish the Boots to search Shade Brigandine, and then the Boots banish will trigger the Torn Scales to come back. And then finally, we're going to set and activate the Shade Brigandine, and then Synchro Climb. So one nice thing about the Torn Scales here that you notice is the Torn Scales is 3, and the Shade Brigandine is level 4. So with the Plague Spreader on field, that means we can just go into Roland and then Charles. So Roland and Shade will synchro into the Charles, and also we'll have the Roland search in the end phase. Finally, we're going to banish 2 warriors, add back the Phoenix Blade, and then put it back for the Plague Spreader. So now we are entirely set up for the King Calamity combo, but in the end phase, we're going to add a Gearfried and then equip Smoke from the graveyard. And so now, if the opponent has these kind of go second cards that would have hard stopped this combo before, you can just rip it out of their hand with Charles, which is really, really strong. So you take out whatever card is most valuable to them, and then in their main phase, you tag Fibrax out into Formula, draw a card, and then use Formula to go into your King Calamity using the Savage Dragon. And so the King Calamity will activate, you will shut them out of their turn, and they can't respond to it. And now you have a huge amount of pressure to push for next turn and just kill them outright. Because in the end phase, Charles is also going to equip back Durandal from the graveyard, and you have a Gearfried in hand for the turn 3 push. So this kind of solves a lot of the major problems that the King Calamity combo had before. So this is the first example of kind of how you can use Torn Scales to kind of go into these really oppressive boards. This is combo number 2, and it's going to make use of Cherubini to give us tuner access, and it's going to also kind of show how you can use existing combos and their pressure to kind of create a no-win situation for your opponent and just guaranteed combos, which is, I think, a really strong point of Torn Scales. So starting off, you're going to go the same route as before, Torn Scales, dump Cloak, add Boots, Special Boots, and since these are both level 3, now we can go into Cherubini instead of Assault. So Cherubini is going to dump Carboneddin here, and so Carboneddin says you can banish it and then special summon a level 7 or lower dragon normal monster. And so we're going to use this to summon a tuner. And people generally know that this card can summon tuners. So what's going to happen here is that we're going to combo, and the opponent is going to be very, very reluctant to use Nibiru on us before we summon that tuner, because if they Nibiru us early, we can just summon the tuner with Carboneddin and then use Carboneddin and the Nibiru token to go into a Fiber, which, if you recall from the last video, Fiber is the full Colt Wing combo. And so just knowing that, and the fact that that is pretty well known at this point, is a huge amount of pressure on the opponent to not drop the Nibiru before you commit this Carboneddin to the board. So we're going to use Boots to get Shade, and then Scales will revive itself, and we're going to summon Shade. And now we're going to summon our Isolde. The Isolde is going to add whatever you want, and we're going to mill 4 cards to summon Ogier in this case, which will dump a Gearfried to the graveyard. So at this point, you still haven't summoned the Carboneddin, and you're not really threatening a Herald, and so it's fairly likely that the opponent just doesn't drop Nib at all. And we're going to use that to your advantage by linking off the Isolde and the Cherubini into Apollousa. So when was the last time you saw this card in the combo deck, right? And the Apollousa is now going to give you insurance against most hand traps in the game. And again, if they do drop the Nib, you're just going to use your Carboneddin, banish it, summon a tuner, and then you're going to go into your Fiber into Colt Wing combo from there and end on a Charles plus a Herald. So kind of a win-win for you. There's really no way to punish this apart from multiple hand traps or yeah. And if you paid attention, you'll actually notice that we dumped a very unusual card off our Isolde. We dumped Infernoble Arm Joyeuse. And this is, I think, one of my favorite cards in this deck that we never found a good use for. So what it does is that it's like Durandal in that you just equip it to anything. And while it's equipped, you can add back a Fire Warrior from your graveyard to your hand and then destroy it. So while this card is good in theory, the problem with this card in practice was that you always wanted to search this card. And anytime you could search Joyeuse, you could search Renaud instead. And Renaud is just better than Joyeuse in almost every scenario. So there was kind of no reason to play this card. So unfortunately, you don't see much of it in like meta Infernoble lists, but there is a use for it in this combo, which is one of my favorite parts of this combo. So we're going to go ahead. Now we have an Apollousa, so we're protected, and we're going to finally use our Carboneddin to summon a tuner. And so the one I'm using is Galaxy Serpent because it's level 2, but you could probably use other tuners. There's just kind of no reason not to use Galaxy Serpent, so we're going to go ahead and do Fibrax combo under Apollo, which is just a terrifying sentence. We're going to summon a Vylon Sphere, so this card has been covered in plenty of other combo videos. It equips back an equip from the graveyard to a monster you control, and we're going to abuse Vylon Sphere in this combo by using it more than once per turn. So using Fibrax and the Sphere, or actually rather, the Fibrax is going to go into Link Rust because we actually haven't used Link Rust yet. Summoning 2 tokens, and then Sphere plus 1 token are going to go into Formula. So both of these will trigger, you're going to draw a card, and Sphere will equip itself back from the graveyard onto a monster. When you equip it back, you're going to swap it for an equip in your graveyard. So we're going to use that to get Durendal onto a monster, and then Durendal will get Renode. And you'll also have drawn a card during this, so just remember that. With the Formula and the other token, we're going to go into a Marcher, and Marcher is going to bring back the Violent Sphere, and this card has no once per turn clause anywhere on it. So now we're going to link off the Sphere and the Link Cross into a second Vibrax. This could also be a Barricade Board blocker, and you're going to trigger Sphere again. And so this is where Joyeuse comes in handy, because you're going to swap the Sphere out for a Joyeuse, and now this card can activate, and you're going to use this to get back the Gearfried. So we have now searched out a Gearfried, and we haven't even used a Renode yet. So that's kind of one of my favorite parts of this combo. It's just really cool to see this card finally have a use, and I'm very excited about it. Now that the Marcher and the Fibrax are on the field, again, this could be a Barricade Board, just has to be a machine. You're going to go Marcher and the Fibrax into Auroradon, summon 3 tokens. I make a small mistake here. I use the Auroradon too early. You actually don't want to use this yet. So you're going to want to summon the Gearfried first. And the reason for that is because we're going to summon a Colt Wing off the Auroradon. But we don't care about the effect. We literally just care that it's level 4. And the reason you want to summon the Gearfried first is because Colt Wing's effect to summon tokens is mandatory. So if the Gearfried is here, you only have 1 zone. You can't resolve this effect fully because it says special summon exactly 2. And so you won't summon any tokens. But if you didn't summon the Gearfried, then you would clog your own monster zones with tokens, and you don't want that. So yeah, so we do it this way, and we're going to summon now the Renode because Gearfried is a Fire Warrior, and we're going to add back the Living Fossil that we banished to summon the Gearfried. Now Renode and the Auroradon token are going to do a Herald. We can fossil back a level 2 tuner, so just a Galaxy Serpent. This is, again, why we ran Galaxy Serpent to begin with. Serpent and the level 3 token are going to go into Roland, and then Roland plus the level 4 Colt Wing are going to go into Charles. And in the end phase, we'll do the standard hand loop. So yeah, that is Apollo plus Herald plus Gearfried plus the Charles hand loop off of Torn Scales and a discard. So this is actually arguably the weakest of the 3 boards I'm going to show today, but this is personally my favorite combo because it utilizes cards like Joyeuse, which you just don't see a use for. And also, I think it's really cool that you apply a ton of pressure with Carboneddin because it guarantees this tuner follow-up. Like before, when you wanted to play around Nib, you had to open a tuner in addition to your result combo. Now, it guarantees the Carboneddin follow-up into Fibrax off of your beginning combo enabler. So I thought that was extremely cool. And the fact that you can go into this Apollo when no one expects it, and they're still trying to play around your Carboneddin grave. The Apollo also just punishes the Nib, and there's really no opportunity to punish this combo with just 1 hand trap. So yeah, that is combo number 2. This is going to be the 3rd and final combo, and it's going to involve Tricking of All Calamities. It's going to be similar to existing combos that already kind of use cards like Black Garden to spam out Coral Dragon and summon Calamities plus a Charles hand loop. It's already been used to great effect by players like Gabriel Susi in the Remote Duel Invitational, or by Lungerdy in LCS 6, who finished top 4. I talked a bit about some of the weaknesses of the Calamities build in Ivan's deck profile, which is also on this channel, so check that out if you're interested. Basically, the deck's main counterplay against hand traps is either opening Gearfried or summoning a Dolphin off of your Isolde, and then sniping the hand trap and then summoning a Tuner Extender. So the problem is that there's not really a consistent way to play around Nibiru short of just hard opening Gearfried, which is not something you're going to do extremely consistently. You don't really put up like an early Herald or an early Savage, and so if your opponent knows you're on this build, it can be very difficult to kind of prevent them from just ending your whole turn by dropping a Nibiru at the end of your combo. So Torn Scales is going to help kind of patch up that hole in this variant's playstyle, and it's going to really allow you to end on an absolutely ridiculous board. So let's get started. It's going to start the same way as usual. You're going to go Torn Scales into Cloak, into Boots, and you're going to summon the Boots and then make Cherubini. The Cherubini is going to dump a Carboneddin. And now, instead of going Isolde directly, we're going to summon the Galaxy Serpent immediately first. And then we're going to turn the Cherubini into a Link Cross. So this is very similar to what Dragon Link does right now, is that it uses level 2 tuner plus your Link Cross to basically put out a Herald before you've actually committed to your main combo. So with Dragon Link, it's their LP. In this deck, you still haven't really summoned back your Torrent Scales, and you haven't made your Assault yet. So you're threatening a Herald before the Assault even hits the board, which is crazy. So we're going to go Marcher into Herald. And now we're finally going to use our boots to get Shade Brigandine and then bring back Torn Scales and make Assault. And so now we can do the Assault combo under Herald, and this is now our Nibiru and other hand trap protection. So that's, first of all, that's just insane. You can feel free to take this concept as well as any other concepts from the other combos and just run with them and experiment, see what you like. But this is one of the main draws of cards like Torn Scales, is that you can just set up this really consistent protection before even putting Assault on the board. So now I'm going to show maybe not the most practical combo, but one of the coolest things you can do is you mill 4 here, and you summon OGA. You can summon a Dolphin instead. You could alter this in any number of ways, but this is one I found that I really enjoyed. You're going to summon the OGA, and you're going to mill a Gearfried. And note that because his Herald is on the field, it means that if you summon a monster that mills something, if it's a monster, it'll get banished. So that was kind of a pain when I was trying to figure out Armageddon Knight combos, because if you sent like a Plague Spreader, it would get banished by the Herald. But this actually works out just fine because Renaud can add back this Gearfried from banish later, so we're actually okay with that. But there's another version of this combo, which is a little greedier, or a lot greedier actually, where you summon the Assault first before even putting this Herald up, and that allows you to put the Gearfried in Graveyard instead of banished. And that lets you get an extra negate at the end of your board. The problem, of course, is that if you don't summon the Herald early, then you're just comboing completely blind, so probably not the most reliable, but I will show an alternative route to kind of do that at the end of this combo. Anyway, we're going to go into 5 racks now with Link Cross and the Serpent, summoning Violent Sphere, and we need to link off this Violent Sphere to get the Durendal back from the graveyard, so we're going to actually turn the Violent Sphere and the Assault into a second 5 racks. Again, this could be a barricade board blocker. It's not important. You're just laddering into Auroradon. The Sphere is going to swap itself for a Durendal, and then the Durendal is going to get Renaud. And now, because OGA is still on the field and is a Fire Warrior, we can summon the Renaud and get back Gearfried. Now we're going to go Renaud OGA into Garden Rose Maiden, and the rest of this is going to be kind of well-established theory involving Black Garden in the Calamities build. So go into Rodon, 3 tokens, play Black Garden at this point, and then summon Mechaphan and Beast Warblerin. This is just level 1 tuner, that's all it does. Warblerin and the Maiden will go into Coral Dragon, and Coral Dragon and the token will go into any level 9 Synchro. So typically, this was Croco Dragon. You'd get a free draw off of Coral and a free draw off of Croco. But now the Phantom Rage is out, you could instead play Virtual World QB Shen Shen, which is typically a card you see in Virtual World decks, but is in fact a generic level 9 Synchro. So you could just make it in this deck, and it has a generic effect to bring itself back on turn 3. So this is just a free 2800 beater that is also like a walking Macrocosmos for monsters in the field. So this is just better than Croco. We're going to do this instead. This is also our 3rd summon for Black Garden. So we're going to destroy all 3 of the Black Garden tokens. I don't know what happened there. All 3 of the Black Garden tokens and bring back the Coral Dragon. Know that the garden gets banished because of Shen Shen, but that doesn't matter. We're going to summon the Gearfried now and overlay with the Shen Shen to make VFD. Basically because we don't want the Shen Shen to stay in the field, because we want this to go to graveyard. Not really a big deal. The Coral and the last token will go into Charles. And during the end phase, you are going to hand loop them like normal. There is a Smoke Grenade in your graveyard, so you're just going to get that back. Notice that you didn't summon Roland in this combo, but that's kind of typical of this build. I noticed also that we didn't use Maiden's Effect to bring back Coral, but that's okay, because this board is already very good, and the Coral Dragon can be used next turn along with the Shen Shen to just guarantee game through basically anything. So this is the standard version of this combo, which is just really crazy. Puts out this Calamities, puts out this Negate very early on, and so they can't Nibiru you, and it's really, really strong, but it can be even stronger if you choose to go the super greedy route, where you manage to get Gearfried in the graveyard before you summon Herald. So I'll just showcase what that looks like. You would have roughly this field. After you use a Roardown effect, you would have 2 tokens. You'd have the Warblerin and the Maiden, and you'd have a Black Garden in hand. And when you summoned Renaud earlier in the combo, instead of adding back the Gearfried, you would add back a DDR. And this is a DDR you would have milled off of Isolde. So now we're going to combo a little differently, and if the sequencing here looks awkward, it's because I'm trying to avoid having my big monsters have their attack halved by Black Garden, so it's not that important because this combo should just auto-win you the game, but that's the reasoning for the kind of weird sequencing. You're going to go Coral into a level 9. In this case, we're going to go into Cloud Castle. Cloud Castle will bring back the Gearfried, and then we're going to Garden and use Maiden to bring back Coral, so that's the first summon. Coral and the other token are going to make Shen Shen, that's the second summon. And we're going to go into our Calamities. And so that's the third summon. Calamities unfortunately has its attack halved, but it really doesn't matter because you put out a ridiculous amount of damage with this combo in the first place. We're going to pop all 3 Black Garden tokens and bring back the Coral Dragon, and now we're going to add back Phoenix Blade so we can use DDR. DDR is going to bring back one of the Phantom Knights, which is level 3, and then finally we're going to go into Charles using the Coral Dragon here. So compared to the other board, now we have a free Gearfried, and the reason we were able to get this is because we could Cloud Castle it back from the graveyard, which you can't do, of course, if the Gearfried is banished off of the Herald. And then in the end phase, you just handle them with the Smoke Grenade for normal, and that is going to be it for this combo. So yeah, just an example of how Tornscales can just add a lot of extra oomph to these existing combos and really just generate these absolutely ridiculous boards. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up for the combos for now, and we're going to go into kind of a very quick deck profile where I also talk about what I think are kind of the strengths and the weaknesses of this build. To close out the video, I'm going to cover a quick example deck profile incorporating Tornscales. This build is meant to do the second combo I showed in the video, which kind of uses the Carbonated Engrave as pressure to discourage the opponent from ever hand trapping you, and then you can just slap an Apollo on the board and do your combo after that. I do want to kind of talk about why the title of this video is Combo Showcase, because this is kind of a disclaimer that this is more kind of a demonstration of what cards like Tornscales are capable of. I'm going to cover again some of the pros and cons, and I think that a lot of the combos that I showed are not necessarily the most practical ones you would go for, but they're really just kind of illustrating the ceiling of these cards. So I kind of want you to think about that when I talk about the pros and the cons of this build. But just quickly going over the card choices, 3 Tornscale, and then 1 of the PKs. These are necessary. And then you play 1 Gearfried, 1 OGA, and then you max out on good extenders. So you play 3 Renaud, 3 Oliver, 3 Junk Forward. So this is an interesting choice because you typically see Red Layer. The idea is that if you open Junk Forward and Tornscales, and they somehow hand trap your Tornscales, for example, you can still go forward plus the Tornscales into a Cherubini, which is just nice utility that other Warrior extenders don't have. And likewise, you play Tornscales and card like Fireflet, because after they hand trap your Tornscales, you can still go into an Assault after that, which is super nice. And then only 1 Red Layer because this conflicts with Junk Forward, but this is also searchable off of Durendal, so just 1 is fine, I think. And then the Garnet Brigade, down here you have Colt Wing, Carbonated, Genba, Sphere, Despot, Galaxy Serpent. You have Searchers, so 3 Heritage, 3 Durendal, 3 Fossil because your fallback option is the Power Tool combo. The 1 Joyas for the Gearfried combo. This is not really necessary, but this is just, I love this card, so we play this. Smoke Grenade, Phoenix Blade, Midbreaker against hand traps, because this is very, very good if you open this with Tornscales. And also, this allows you to discard a card off Barricade Board Blocker, since it's a field spell. And then Reborn Rhoda and 1 Shade Brigandine. So, to talk about this list kind of, I think I showed a lot of the pros of Tornscales in the sense that this card raises your ceiling to an extreme amount. Like the boards, all 3 boards I showed are crazy oppressive, and they are also like pretty safe. They all do establish the gates pretty early. But there is an opportunity cost here, because if you are sticking closer to 40, you're not playing cards like Connector. And I think Connector is the big one, because you are basically saying, I'm okay with giving up the hand advantage or the knowledge of their hand that Aqua Dolphin provides me, and instead going for a card like Tornscales. And so that's, I think, one of the drawbacks, and it's a little mitigated by the fact that all these Tornscale combos are putting up these negates early. So it's saying, I don't care what you have in your hand. I have so much gas from this card that I'm going to put a negate early. I'm going to force whatever hand traps you have, and I'm going to combo after that. So that's a call you have to make, I suppose. The second, and I think most obvious drawback, is that you play an absolute ton of Garnets in this deck. So these 6 down here are all Garnets, and cards like Galaxy Serpent are really bad to draw because Carbon can only summon from deck. And so you play more Garnets in this version than in the traditional version, which already kind of bricks on cards like Coltwing, and even the small PKs here can be considered Garnets. I haven't worked out combo routes for when you open these, but definitely opening these cards can kind of dampen your day somewhat. So that's definitely a major drawback of this. And so one thing you might want to try is, what if I play like 50 cards or 60 cards, and I kind of lower my chances of seeing these Garnets, and then I could also play like a connector as well. So you play like 6 or more normal summons in like a 50 card list, which is fine. And the problem with that is that if you're building your whole deck to be around these Tornscale combos, you want to be seeing Tornscale in your opening hand as much as possible. And so going up above 40 is directly countering how frequently you see the Tornscale in your opening hand. And so it's kind of a paradox that you really cannot solve in these types of lists. So either you're going to stay low and see Tornscale more often, but also see your Garnets more often, or you're going to go higher and just not see the combo that your entire deck is designed around. So that's another pretty big drawback of this list, and I think that's the single biggest drawback of these combos is that they just require so many Garnets, and it's contradictory to your whole game plan, which is to play 40 and just see as close to or see the combo as frequently as possible. And then finally, because you have all these combo pieces in this deck, it requires a lot of space, and you'll find that it is very difficult to incorporate any kind of utility cards. So a lot of noble lists will play, maybe one set of hand traps. So in Ivan's list, for example, he played 3 Gamma. If you look at Cam's list from LCS 8, he played Talents, for example, and some other utility cards, and you just don't have room in this type of list because so many cards are needed for your engine. And you could theoretically start cutting stuff like Junk Forward and your second or third copies of Fireflint Lady, but then you're cutting extenders for that, and your deck becomes weaker and weaker and less resilient. So that's kind of a rough one. Another point is that something I kind of showcase as a pro in these combos is that, oh, look, you're putting up these negates early, like Cherubini is giving you this negate before you are sold, which is super nice. But then the problem is that if Tornscale is such insane value, they're just going to hand up your Tornscale 100% of the time. And that can be rough. So like if you summon a Tornscale and it eats a Gamma, and then suddenly all the resilience of these combos doesn't mean anything because you can't get started, because your opponent knows how high value this card is, and they'll just hand trap it immediately. That is another potential thing I want you to think about. And similarly to the whole utility card discussion is that you require a lot of pieces in the extra deck. And so in this build, for example, I think almost all of these cards are necessary for the combos, and you have to play the power tool for if you get hand trapped and you do the Coltwing combo as like a fallback. And so there's no room for utility in your extra, like there's no room for access code, and there's no room for even utility synchros like Tatsunoko in this list, for example, are just not able to be fit. And so, yeah, I mean, I did spend a great amount of time showing these combos, which I'm very excited about, and then I spent the last like 5 or 8 minutes just roasting this deck. So I do want to present, kind of pros and cons. Again, it's really meant to showcase kind of how many options a card like Tornscales can open up, and I've also not really seen any other channels talk about Infernoble combos involving this card. Most of them are like Dragoon combos and whatnot, and so I really wanted to show something different, and I was very excited to showcase these combos, and I hope you enjoy them at least. But yeah, that's more or less going to wrap it up. A lot's going to change also when we get a ban list, hopefully in about a month. That's one of the reasons I wanted to get this video out early, is because I think a lot of us are hoping that interactions like, Isolde, Fiber, Linkross are no longer, playable after the hopeful Christmas list. But yeah, there's no telling what's going to happen there. And if parts of these survive, you could see these adapted into new combos as this deck continues to adapt in a new format. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you like this kind of content. Check out our sponsor, Card Market. And yeah, peace.